This tutorial is going to be your second lesson in Java programming, and we're going to be extending upon what we did in lesson 1 by focusing on the input and output in a Java console app. We're also going to be creating some variables, manipulating them, and there's even an import statement in here, so I'll explain what that is in a minute. But if you need a refresher on how to set the path, variables, and compiling Java, go back to lesson 1 and review that thoroughly, because I'm going to move quickly through those stages in this tutorial. Alright, so let me show you what the program is going to look like and what it's going to do. It's an age calculator app, so I'm going to open up a command prompt, and I'm going to change my directory to where my program is. Now my program is on the desktop right here, so that's where I'm going to change the directory to. And the next step is to set the path variable. So I say path C:, and wherever Java happens to live on my computer, I need to do that. So I'm going to, again, fly through this step. And the full explanation of this was in lesson 1, so I'm just going to type it out here. And now my path is set. So the next step that we had to do was compile the program. So I'm going to use the Java tool called the Java compiler. That's Java C. And then I'm going to type the name of this program. It's agecalculator.java. And as long as there's no errors, I'm going to get a file over here that pops up, and this has all the bytecode in it. So that basically is the code that the Java runtime environment is going to use to actually run this program. Now the command to actually run it is going to be Java agecalculator. And here's what it's going to ask. It's going to say, first, in what year were you born? So I'm going to make up a year here. We'll say 1970. And in what month were you born? I'll say July, which is 7, and in what month, or what day of the month? Let's say 4th. So that makes me 44 years old, and that's equivalent to 532 months. In the year 2035, I'll be 64, and in the year 2050, I'll be 79. So the program did a lot. We entered in 3 things, and we got out 4 things. So that's input, that's output, but there's also some manipulation going on there. So let's go over how we did that. I'm going to go ahead and close the program now, and I'm going to open up Notepad. Right now Notepad is blank, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in what's called an import statement. We're going to be using a thing called a scanner. So this is what handles input and output. So to do that, it's already part of the Java library. All I have to do is say import java.util.S scanner, semicolon. And then I'm going to set up my class. So again, it's the keyword public class, and then I'm going to say age calculator, and the A and the C are going to be capitalized. And then I'm going to set up some curly braces. So the left-facing curly brace and the right-facing curly brace, and then I'm going to separate the two to create my class container. And then on line 5 here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a main method, and that's where all of our code today is going to live. So I'm going to say public static void main, and string, but the S is capitalized because, once again, we talked about this in lesson 1, that's a class. So the next word is going to be args with square brackets, and then a set of curly braces to create a container for the main method. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut of Control S, and it's going to ask me, what do I want to call this? Well, I'm going to call this agecalculator.java. I went a little too fast there, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And if you do it correctly in Notepad, it's going to start color coding things for you. So you should see a little bit of a change in your text if you're following along. All right, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create some variables in Java. And we're going to keep it real simple here. We're going to create what's called integers. Integers are round numbers. So like 5, 38, 104. Those are all integers. But we're going to give these integers a variable name. So for right now, I'm going to say current year. And I'm using a convention called camel case here that has the first letter of my variable in lowercase, but each subsequent word that I'm squeezing together here is going to be capitalized. It makes it a little easier to read. So this is camel case, and this up here, by the way, is Pascal case. So having every word that I'm scrunching together capitalized makes the two stand out. But classes, as I mentioned in lesson 1, should be uppercase from the start, whereas variables and methods and things of that nature are going to be lowercase from the start. And that way we can distinguish the two in our code. So I'm going to say the first one is current year, and actually I'm going to set it equal to 2015 right now. And the next one's going to be current month. And I'll just say it's 4 for April. And then I'm going to say the current day, which is 14. And I think that's all I need right now. Okay, next up, oh, I do need one more, and that is how many days in the year it's been. So this is going to count up if you look on the calendar, the days on the calendar sometimes are numbered. April 14th is the 104th day of the year. You could also Google it, it'll tell you. So I'm going to make a variable called day of the year. It's just going to tell me that April 14th is the 104th day of the year. So that's its value. All right, next I'm going to make a couple of variables that I'm going to set apart from those top variables. And that's because the top variables represent our current date, and this second set is going to represent whatever the user inputs. So actually the name of these is I'm going to say input year, and I'm not going to assign a value to it yet because I don't know what the user is going to pick. So we're going to save that for our input statements. So input month is going to be the next one, and then input day. And then finally, the third sequence of variables here, I'm going to calculate the age of whatever the user puts in. So I'm going to make 3 more integers, and the first one's going to be age in years. We're also going to calculate the age in months. And actually, we're going to stop right there. We're going to just calculate those 2 things, because if we go beyond that, then we have to get into leap years and stuff, and we don't need to go that far in your second application. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use this import statement to begin inputting data from the user at runtime. So let's do what we've already done in lesson 1 first, and that is give them a message to reply to. So I'm just going to say system.out.print, and in a set of parentheses and a set of double quotes, I'm just going to say in what year were you born? Question mark. And I'm going to put a space after that question mark to give some separation between the answer that they're going to give and the input, or the string that I just put in here. All right, next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create our scanner. So the scanner is what's actually going to take in input in the console window. So to do that, I'm just going to use the scanner class, and again, that's a capital S. capital letter indicates it's going to be a class, so scanner, and we're just going to name this scanner SC for short. And it's a new instance of the scanner class, so we just say equals new scanner, and in parentheses we're going to say system.in. So it basically represents input into the system. Okay, I also wanted to point out above here that since we're talking about classes, and classes are uppercase, this is the class in and of itself. Then we have an object here called out, and then we have a method. So later on in the course when we talk about object orientation, we've got the class, we've got objects, and we've got methods. And we also have fields that we could access, which are properties, which might tell us that an object is red or its value is 3 or something like that. Okay, but moving on, now we're going to grab that input. So that only created the scanner, didn't actually request anything. So we're going to say the input year is going to equal, or take the value of, I should say, the scanner dot next integer. All right, so next int is what we're going to take in. So it's going to look for the next int that was put into the system, and it's going to give that value to input year. I think I'm going to squeeze these together, so that all goes together. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to basically repeat this process 2 more times, but ask different things. So the second one is, in what month were you born? Question mark and a space there. And actually, just to help out the user a little bit, I'm going to do a little defensive programming here and tell them how to enter in some information. Now, later on, we're going to worry about validating the data, but for now, we're just going to tell them you got to enter in a number between 1 and 12. And that's just some helpful information. They could potentially put something else, but again, that's a conversation we'll have on another day. So the next thing is we're going to set the value of input month equals sc.nextInt. All right, so input month is going to take the value of whatever the next integer is. And we have one more question to ask. And that is going to be, on what day of the month, enter 1 to 31, were you born? And I did notice that I just left out a period right there, so I'm going to add that. And on the next line, we're going to set the value of input day to the scanner's next integer that's entered. Okay, so 3 questions, 3 responses recorded. Okay, now we're going to begin calculating the age of this input. All right, so the first thing that we can do is we can say the age in years is going to then be equal to the current year minus input year. All right, simple enough. Actually, I'm going to separate this for readability, and I need a semicolon at the end. Okay, now that could be potentially incorrect, so we need to go through a condition. So what if it was the current year, for instance, this is 2015, and somebody was born in 2010. Well, that would say that their age is 5 years old. But what if they were born in December? Well, really they're 4 years old and 4 months. So we need to basically subtract 1 if their current birthday hasn't come around yet. So to do that, we're just going to enter in some if statements. Now, I would put this all on one line, but I'm going to separate this so it's easier for you to read. So the first thing I'm going to say is if the current month is less than the input month, and then I'm going to set up an if statement. Then we're going to take their age in years, which we've already calculated, and I'm going to say minus minus, which means subtract 1. So that's the first condition that it's going to check to see if we need to subtract something. All right, another condition that could ring true is that if the current month equals, so I need two equal statements there, otherwise you're going to be assigning a value instead of testing for a value. It's a very common mistake. If the current month equals the input month and the current day is less than the input day, then they haven't had their birthday yet. So we again need to age in years minus minus with a semicolon. So we would basically subtract a day if we're in the current month and they have not reached their birthday yet. So this is only going to check if the month has not been reached, and this one would then check if we're actually in that month, but the day hasn't come along yet to celebrate. Now we could combine these two if statements together, but since this is your only, this is the second project, I'm going to save that for when we talk about decisions. All right, so next up, we can begin calculating what their age is in months. We could even do days if we wanted to get into the leap years, but let's just do months. So I'm going to say age in months. And the calculation would be age in years, which we've already made sure that we have the correct number, times 12 months, plus however many months that we have so far. So the current month, so let's say we're in April, it would be how many years times 12 plus the 4 months that we've had in this year. So that's how old they are in months. Okay, so now let's start printing this stuff out. System.out.println, ln. So print ln would be print line. What that's going to do is print an entire line, then go to the next line. And in a set of double quotes, I'm going to say you are space, I'm going to end the quote, and then I'm going to do what's called concatenation. In my programming classes up to this point, I've mentioned this many times. Concatenation means merge two things together, two strings. So I'm going to say you are space double quote plus their age in years. Space plus another quote and then another space for readability, years old. So what this is going to say is you are fill in the blank years old based upon the computer figuring it out. On the next line, I'm going to do another print line. I'm going to say you are, and this time around I'm basically doing the same thing but age in months. So it's going to say you are fill in the blank months old. And I should probably put a period in each one of those. And then the last two is it's going to figure out how old you would be in 2035 or 2050. So for that, in the year 2035, you will be, and then I'm going to put space and a double quote, and then I'm going to concatenate. Now, with Java, I don't have to keep everything on the same line. So for the sake of readability, I'm going to push this to the next line, and then tab over. And then I'm going to add this calculation just so it's easier for you to read. And I'm going to put this in a set of parentheses because order of operations matters. And even though that's not going to come into play here, hopefully it'll make it easier for you to see. So I'm going to say in the year 2035 minus the current year, but plus age in years. And the reason why I'm going to write it like this is so that I have fewer things to change later on if I wanted to reuse this code again. Anytime you can avoid hard coding in, or basically typing in a specific number like 2035, you want to do that. So that's what I've done here by plugging in these variables and coming up with this calculation. For instance, if this program was still around in 2035, I wouldn't really want to know what my age is in years and also how old I would be in the same year. So I wouldn't have to go and change it. So I might want to have a variable in here. I might want to read the scanner input instead and put that down as the calculation. So I'm just pointing it out now. It's something to think about for the future, that for the life of the application here, anytime that you can avoid putting in hard numbers and instead replace it with a variable is generally a good idea. Okay, and then I'm going to concatenate onto that little statement, years old, period. All right, so the whole thing will say in the year 2035 you will be fill in the blank years old. And to save myself some time, I'm going to do the same thing one more time, but I'm going to change this to 2050. Okay, so I think I have everything at this point. So let me just kind of quickly review. The first thing is the scanner input will not work unless we import the Java library that does that. So that comes from the utilities import up here, so the java.util, and the scanner class is being brought in. Line 3 is the name of this little program. It's an age calculator. That's what this class does. And then it has a main method in it. So the main method tells the program where to start. And then it's basically going to sequentially begin executing these lines of code in order the way it's presented here. There's no jumping around yet. So the first thing that we did was we declared some variables. It's always good to put your declarations of variables at the top, and then everything that you're doing behavior-wise below that. So I have some input and some output in these statements right here. So I'm outputting some questions, and then I'm inputting some answers. Then I'm manipulating the data down here, so I'm doing a processing stage and then a final output. So just like we introduced at the beginning of the course, there are 3 phases of most every program. You've got your input, your processing stage, and your output. And this is a perfect example of that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to save this app, and the final thing would be to compile it, check for errors, and if there's any errors, we're going to try to fix it, and just run the application and see how it goes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and shrink this down. We'll go ahead and test it. I'm going to delete this old bytecode, and I'm going to launch my command prompt. I'm going to cd to my desktop, set the path, just like that. Then I have to compile it. That's step 2. So Java C is Java compile. And here it says I'm missing a semicolon on line 39. So just like I demonstrated in lesson 1, all I have to do is read where the error is, and it's just a simple semicolon on line 39. Go fix that, save it, recompile, try it again. All right, so let's go do that. Here is line 39 right there. Take away that right there. And then I'm going to save it. Very simple thing to do. And the up arrow will allow me to go back to commands I've already done. I'm going to Java compile it again. And I have an error on line 39. So age, I forgot the IN in years. So let me go back to there once more. Age in years. Save. Recompile. And now I'm fine. Okay, so now I can run the Java command to actually execute this, and age calculator, and now it's asking me the questions. All right, so everything is going really well right now, so now I'm going to say I was born in 1985, and in what month? Well, let's say November, and let's say right around Thanksgiving. 25th. All right, so that now says that I'm 29 years old and I'm 352 months old. In 2035 I'll be 49, and in 2035, I need to make that 2050, but I'll be 64 years old in that time. So the calculation is correct, but the text was wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that right now. So in 2050 is what that should say. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And what I'll do is make a snapshot of this code for you and post that on our Google Classroom so that you can see the complete code. And this is what you're going to compile. If you get it to run, go ahead and turn it in on the Google Classroom as well. If you have any questions, see me in class.